Welcome into a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Happy 2025, another year of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, we're here before every UFC event, breaking down the fight card from a DraftKings FanDuel perspective, but also from a betting perspective as well. Pete, how you doing, man?
What's going on? Happy 2025, everybody. Hope you guys had a good holiday break, good almost month off. Here circling back and trying to get back to winning some money on some MMA fights via DFS and sports betting. So thanks for joining us. And not the greatest card to return to, but at least it's something. And then followed up by a good card next week. So all in all, though, I'm just happy to have some fights.
That's the crazy part about this, Pete, is the fact of, you think about it, we've gone 4 weeks from, the last UFC fight card of 2024 to this one. You would think we might have a little bit of a card on paper that we'd be a little more excited about, but, we're Apex fighting. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I also think, honestly, like, some high-profile names, like, if you're not dangling some crazy money in front of them to fight around or near the holidays, a lot of people too enjoy just taking that little time off. So I think it kind of makes sense that it's just some hungry up-and-comers, some fighters that just want to stay active. But the most high-profile names tend to avoid the holidays the best they can.
And some people may recall this, some people may not. The main event on Saturday, the rematch between Dern and Ribas, was actually supposed to take place on December the 14th. The UFC moved this fight card to make it the main event, so something to kind of note there. We have 14 fights on Saturday. 7 fighters on this card have a price tag of $9,000, which I can't ever recall us seeing that. I mean, it's a 14-fight card. We got a rematch. I think there's some fights on this card. We can kind of start talking about game theory a little bit here. There is one fight that I think you should prioritize for GPPs. That's the co-main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio and Carlston Harris. There's a fight that I think that you either X out or you say, I'm taking no more or 5 to 10% on this fight, and that is Thiago Moises and Trey Ogden.
Yeah, I mean, to be contrarian and maybe get more exposure to that fight that tends to look like a low volume affair between Trey Ogden and Thiago Moises. You already know that the ownership is going to be attracted to the 8,200, 8,000 fight that I hate each and every week. Not to mention it's between two aged guys. So that's one of the most difficult fights for me on the card to predict. And a lot of times what I try to do is I just try to avoid headaches. I take a single entry approach. If I hit big, I hit big. I would say for GPPs, it makes a ton of sense if you're doing a 20 or a 150 max to smash exposure to that, pick 'em fight. But if you're doing a single entry, sometimes it's best to just, work your way around that fight where people could be, kind of lost in the shuffle. But yeah, all in all, crazy favorites, kind of like some Dana White's Contender Series, prodigies making their debuts here, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see if we agree on some fights or disagree.
Yeah, we have 5 fighters who are making their official UFC debut. The guy that sticks out to me, that intrigues me the most in this fight card and will likely be a core play for me, Jacobe Smith. I think he is the real deal. You go back and, one thing I always say is I think there's certain regional promotions that I look at and say, I want to favor those fighters when they come into the UFC. Fury FC, to me, is one of those promotions on the regional scene that I really look at and say, okay, those fighters, for the most part, yes, they're going to get, the kind of the showcase fights, but as they develop, Fury really does give them the tough fights. They put fights together. This isn't Alaska FC, folks,
No.
Where you never want to back an Alaska FC fighter.
Yeah, I mean, I like LFA, I like Fury. I mean, there's a few others that I really hold in high regard. Just from fighting on the regional scene and also just knowing several fighters about, Alaska FC is bottom of the barrel. Absolutely. Yeah. But, it goes to show you the strength of schedule, who can be 13-0 and who could be 12-1. But the 12-1 guys fought absolute killers. 13-0 has kind of been, brought up slowly, and, taking a little bit steps forward. But yeah, UFC experience to me, it means everything. So if you're in the UFC and you have a ton of fights, I'm going to be, using that as a metric to value you within a fight a lot more than a debuting fighter.
And we appreciate everyone that's tuned in for the live version of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, if you're not able to watch us live, whether we're doing a show on a Thursday or a Friday, you can check it out on demand on YouTube. Also, you can check it out on the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I already appreciate some of those comments that are coming in terms of that one. One other thing I want to mention before we get into breaking down this fights that I thought was interesting when I was putting my spreadsheet together was the pricing on FanDuel, particularly with the main event. Typically on FanDuel, when we look at the main event, yes, your favorite will be, priced anywhere from, $17 to $23. And typically you don't get much value on the underdog in the main event. But this week, I thought it was interesting. Punahele, $17. I think she's a rightful favorite. I don't know if I really love the betting line on this one, though. But Mackenzie Dern, only $13. So if you are a Mackenzie Dern backer and you do play over on FanDuel, there is some nice little value over there. So that's something I wanted to mention at the beginning of the show. Also, we do have our DraftKings contest. That contest is live. It's in the notes. Also, if you're in our Discord channel, the link to that is in there as well. Of course, the Discord channel, totally free to join. And of course, Pete mentioning about the ownership. If you do want to get those tools that Stochastic does have, they do have a special offer for our listeners. All you got to do is put the promo code FIGHTHQ and you'll get 15% off any MMA package that they do offer. I know we kind of, really dived into that, last 2 months of 2024, some great Sims tools they have over there and help developing your lineups. And of course, if you're in our Score channel, another great way, everyone's kind of talking about how they're developing their lineups. So Pete, let's get right into it. The main event is a rematch. Of course, the first time took place back in 2019. We got Amanda Ribas taking on Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern is a plus 160 betting underdog, minus 190 for Amanda Ribas. Ribas, $8,500 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Dern, $7,700 on DK, and $13 on FanDuel. To me, the two notes on this fight, Pete, are A, Ribas returning to the 115-pound division after being up at 125. And for Dern, one of the things that really sticks out to you is because, when you think of Mackenzie Dern, we think about submissions, but you have to go back to 2021, April 2021, to find the last time Mackenzie Dern won by submission.
Yeah, I've come across some fighters time and time again that, I wish that they made certain moves within their careers, or they found some consistency within their careers, or they got behind a certain coach within a certain specialty to really take their game to the next level. And I've been calling for Mackenzie Dern to go and get into like a heavy wrestling camp to really just kind of, round out her game and help her get the fight to where she's best. She's best on the mat. Her jiu-jitsu is unbelievable. She focused so much on her striking that I think that she kind of fell in love with her hands a little bit, despite not having great technique. She does have some good pop. She's aggressive. She's tough. She'll get knocked down several times and still fight. But to me, it's just not. It's really not catering towards your strengths. You have to strike enough. But the main priority should be getting the fight to where you're best, because you spent your whole life being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. You should be developing your wrestling, your judo, your Greco, everything. You should be trying every which way to get the fight to the mat. And I just don't know if she's made the necessary adjustments to her game over these past couple of years. Do I think she's better than, when they first fought? Yeah, I do. But I still think she's still lacking certain skills to take her to the next level. She could land a big shot on Amanda Ribas and expose the somewhat poor chin of Amanda Ribas, rock her, possibly finish her on the mat when she drops her. But outside of a finish, I just struggle to see Mackenzie Dern being the better fighter over 25 minutes. The 25 minutes could open the door for the likelihood of a finish happening a little bit more than 15 minutes, just because she has more room to work with. But all in all, I was pretty impressed with Amanda Ribas in her most recent fight against Rose Namajunas, winning 2 of the rounds, absolutely 1 round, most likely 2 rounds over Rose Namajunas. Her durability checked out. She got takedowns against Rose Namajunas. I think people sleep on Rose's ground game, and her jiu-jitsu, her MMA grappling is very, very good. And Amanda Ribas has fantastic judo skills. She's a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well. So like even if Mackenzie Dern gets her in a compromising situation, I think that Amanda Ribas can do her best to survive, make it out the round, and then the next round it's gonna start on the feet. And I just think that Amanda is clearly the more active fighter. She's the better striker of the two. Her striking defense is a little bit better just because she's not as hittable. Obviously, I think that Amanda, when she gets hit, you're kind of like always anticipating her to get knocked out. Um, but I can't really. If she went 25 minutes with Rose Namajunas, then it would be very, very difficult for me to see Mackenzie Dern finishing Amanda Ribas in her next fight. So for me, do I like the price tag on Amanda Ribas? Probably not. I think that a little bit is because of the money coming in on Amanda Ribas. I think around minus 150 makes a ton of sense. Um, could you stack this fight? Not really the best fight to stack, in my opinion. Yeah, so where I sit on this fight is I want Mackenzie Dern to win. I like Mackenzie Dern more than I like Amanda Ribas. Mackenzie Dern, not only is she absolutely beautiful, but I think that her jiu-jitsu skills are unbelievable. And as of late, we've seen her stay active, and she got head and armed on the local scene and submitted via armbar. So it's just like, man, are some outside influences really affecting her combat sports career? Very well could be. So with all that being said, I have to go with Amanda Ribas here. The price tag on Amanda Ribas at 8,500 kind of seems like it's almost unavoidable for lineups, just because in her previous fight against Rose Namajunas in a loss, she scored 66.9. I'm expecting that mid-range to kind of make sense. But I do think that the betting line is somewhat getting out of hand. But yeah, so the pick will be Amanda Ribas for me.
Yeah, when I think about from a fantasy score upside and where Amanda Ribas could potentially, be, a slate breaker is if she's able to get those knockdowns. I mean, when you look at the tail of the tape on this one thing that does stick out to you, Ribas does have a 3-inch reach advantage. And when you talk about that takedowns, Mackenzie Dern, a 16% takedown accuracy. On the other side, Amanda Ribas has a 85% takedown defense, which is the second highest rate in this division. The only other fighter in the division has a higher rate is Jinh Frey at 90%. It's just, if you tell me Dern can get this fight to the ground, yeah, I've got some interest in Mackenzie Dern, but it's tough for me to trust Mackenzie Dern at this stage.
What do you think, right? And it's kind of a side note, but like, what camp comes to mind for Mackenzie Dern as like a perfect fit to kind of really round out her skills? Like, you think of a heavy wrestling camp, like obviously if Khabib ever opened up the doors to that, which would never happen, but that would make a ton of sense. Maybe like Killcliff FC to like, get behind Greg Jones with the wrestling. She needs to really focus on the wrestling to like every single day. Just get the fight to where you're best.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were willing to move to Florida, Killcliff or ATT, either one of them.
Yeah.
If you want to stay in California, if they had, it's primarily a male gym, but Team Alpha Male, I think, because of their wrestling abilities.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You look at Henry Cejudo's gym. I think that's another one that you could stick to, just in terms of that wrestling ability. It does seem like more and more fighters are going to Colorado. That seems to be kind of becoming a little bit of a hot spot that a lot of people are going to. I think part of that is also wanting to train elevation too. But yeah, I think Mackenzie Dern is, she maybe has reached her peak. Who knows? This might be where she is. She's a fringe 5 to 7th best in the world.
Yeah. And I don't like playing MMA math because, every fight is different stylistically. But I think that if Mackenzie Dern was in there with Rose Namajunas, Rose gets her out of there. I just personally think she's way too hittable. I don't view Amanda Ribas as dangerous necessarily, but I view her as like the better minute winner. So for me, I could be dead wrong because I do want Mackenzie to win, but the pick will be Amanda Ribas.
Our co-main event will be that 8,200, 8,000 fight. That's Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Carlston Harris. Carlston Harris, 8,200 on DK, 8,000 for Ponzinibbio on DK, 16 for Ponzinibbio on FanDuel, 15 for Harris. Betting line right now, Ponzinibbio, this is a line that's been kind of going back and forth here, minus 135. Plus 115 for Carlston Harris. And as I mentioned right at the beginning of the show, Pete, I do think that this is a fight that you probably have to prioritize in terms of GPP. You know, there was a time where Santiago Ponzinibbio went on a great run. Then the injuries happened. He's now 2-5 in his last 7 matchups. So, he's up there in age. I'm not saying I trust either one of these guys, Pete, but like one of the better plays this week may be just, going to, if you're in a legal state, like here in Florida, going on that Hard Rock app and just say, you know what, let me just take that under 2.5 rounds.
I think it's going to be like America's pick this week of the under 2.5. And, I get it. They're both old. You got Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is clearly the better striker. You got Carlston Harris, who is clearly the better grappler. Carlston Harris has the submission skills to finish the fight, even when seconds are on the clock. He did so against 𝐉𝐨𝐼𝐽 in round 3 with an anaconda choke after losing the previous rounds. Like Santiago Ponzinibbio can take a shot and get dropped by the sloppy, horrible striking of Carlston Harris, but I can knock on the technique of Carlston Harris, but he's effective. Yeah, I mean, he's the same guy that knocked out Impa Kasanganay, and look what Impa has done in the PFL. Outside of his last fight, Impa was on an absolute tear in the PFL. So the way I see this fight going, right, it just seems trappy to me because there was a time, in the fight against 𝐉𝐴𝐼𝐽 where he took some big shots. He got taken down. He was controlled. He was on his way to losing a decision. And then in, round 3, 1 minute, 50 seconds, he locked up that anaconda choke. I think personally he's going to be outmatched on the feet by Santiago Ponzinibbio. Pons was losing majority of the fight against Alex Morono until the 3rd round when he came back. The volume was there, but from the optics standpoint, and I'm pretty sure the score of that was the first 2 rounds was leaning towards Alex Morono. And he has been a guy that has gone late. Split decision against Jeff Neal, split decision against Michel Pereira. The Morono finish in round 3, got knocked out in round 3 against Kevin Holland, split decision over Muslim Salikov. I got a sneaky suspicion this touches the later rounds. And I do, and I know that everybody's on the under 2.5. It could just be my bias of not wanting anything, to do with the 8,200, 8,000 fight, and I try to get different as much as possible, and it's not the best strategy, let me tell you, because it's mostly a part of the optimal lineup. But when you are correct by avoiding it, you avoid the masses of the ownership. So I'm gonna hope, fingers crossed, that this is just a lackluster, maybe not a lackluster decision, but like a decision for Pons where, you got Carlston Harris attempting takedowns, maybe getting, having some success, but basically picking apart Carlston Harris, who happens to be a little bit more durable this week than he has in the past. That's just a sneaky suspicion, but the pick for me is going to be Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think that he's the better striker of the two. Carlston makes way too many errors for my liking. He can land a shot, knock him out. He can get a front headlock position and lock up an anaconda or a darce, no problem at all. But for me, it's going to be Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think that he's, for the most part, pretty difficult to take down. And I think that even if he gets taken down, he'll work his way back up, and he'll be the better striker over 15 minutes. So give me Santiago Ponzinibbio via decision. Unpopular pick, but that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, just looking over at the Hard Rock app, and what is kind of interesting is if you want to chase a little money, Santiago via TKO or TKO plus 240. That's kind of if you want to chase the money. But yeah, I mean, right now the under 2.5 rounds sit at minus 130. I've seen it best, minus 120. But it's just a fight that, you don't you're not going to feel great on either side of this matchup just because of, I mean, you can see paths to both guys, especially if Harris can take the fight to the ground and keep it on the ground there. But to me, the pick is going to be Ponzinibbio, but definitely a fight that you want to prioritize this week. Next up, we got Cesar Almeida taking on Abdul, Razak, Alhassan. Alhassan, a plus 220 betting underdog, minus 270 for Almeida. Almeida, 9,300 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. Alhassan, 6,900 on DK. And $11 on FanDuel. Of course, Alhassan, one of those fighters that has decided to move their training to Colorado, had been in Texas for a long time, now out in Colorado. And I was telling Pete right before the show, as we were kind of talking about, some underdogs to look at. And, I said, I go, man, if Alhassan can go back to that judo, he's kind of an interesting one to me, Pete.
Yeah, I think knee-jerk reaction, like I saw, Abdul Razak Alhassan as an underdog, and I'm like, all right, well, that he likes to strike. He's very, very powerful. Notorious for having poor cardio, hence the move to elevation. Renowned as a judoka, yet he never really goes to that well. I mean, like he's landed the takedown, one against 𝐉𝐵𝐲𝐻𝐼, one against 𝐉𝐵𝐻𝐼𝐧, which went 15 minutes. He ended up getting 3 over Joaquin Buckley, and I do think that fight kind of aged well because what Joaquin has done within a division, is a split decision defeat. But that round 3 is when he really started to go to the well with that. Now, the problem I have in this matchup is he's super aggressive. He comes for the better camp, absolutely, from elevation. I just think, like, on the feet, he's going to be outmatched against Cesar Almeida. I mean, like, I went back and I was like, all right, I've never been big on the Cesar Almeida guy. And I went back and I did some more tape, and I watched, and I'm like, okay, like, now I kind of see a little bit from the striking prowess, like what everybody's talking about. But his takedown defense is like absolute shit. It's terrible. It's horrible. But what do you expect? He's a kickboxer in MMA. I think, like, stylistically, this makes a ton of sense. He's going up against a guy in Abdul Razak Alhassan, who averages 0.88 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think that's mostly because his fights end early or he gets finished early, and a few of the fights are kind of influencing that, like the Joaquin Buckley fight where he scored 3, he scored 1 in the first round against 𝐉𝐵𝐻𝐼𝐧. I just don't think that this is a matchup where Cesar Almeida really has to worry about, defending the takedowns. If it happens, I think that Abdul Razak Alhassan has some upside. I think that he could be an underdog that could cash, because we've seen the glaring holes in Cesar Almeida's game. I mean, like taken down 3 times by Ihor Potieria, 5 times against Roman Kopylov, 3 times against Dylan Budka, 3 times against Lucas Fernando. Good God, that's horrible. Like that's really, really bad. But his takedown defense still sits at 57%, despite being taken down 14 times from Dana White's Contender Series to UFC. So, like, everybody is shooting for their life against this guy. I don't know if Abdul Razak Alhassan is going to shoot for his life. I think that he'll shoot once, maybe twice, and then kind of just, like, get teed off on the feet, trade on the feet, because he's super dangerous. And the likelihood of a knockout coming from Abdul Razak Alhassan is not like super unlikely. Like, he's got crazy power. And Cesar Almeida has been knocked down against Roman Kopylov. But I do think the split decision over Kopylov kind of like it's a loss that has aged well, because I think Kopylov's absolutely legit. And Almeida still made a fight out of it despite being taken down 5 times and controlled for 8 minutes and 40 seconds. It's a long-winded way of me saying I think this fight stays on the feet. Cesar Almeida lands some good shots, and I think he knocks out Abdul Razak Alhassan. The easiest path to victory is for Abdul to lace up his wrestling shoes. I just don't know if he has the grappling skill set to go chain wrestle and to go from throw to shot to throw to shot, just keep throwing as many takedowns. I don't think he can do that for 15 minutes despite training at elevation. So I'm going to be going Cesar Almeida as a big favorite. Do I love the fight? Not entirely in love with the fight, but I do think that Almeida's live to knock out Abdul Razak Alhassan. Give me Cesar Almeida via second round knockout.
And Pete, you know this as a coach and, running a gym. I mean, if you're the head coach of Alhassan, the conversation at least had to happen of, hey, you want to lace up these wrestling shoes?
It should have. I know plenty of people that don't do that. It's an ego thing, right? Too, and people have a hard time putting their pride aside to go out there and view the game like chess. And I view the game like chess. I love playing chess, by the way. I've been playing a lot.
True story. Have no clue how to play chess.
Oh my God, Jason! You play checkers? You play checkers?
Yeah. Well,
it's chess, not checkers. Okay,
all
this
right.
game is chess, not checkers. Jason's a checkers player. There are certain people on this card that play checkers, just like Jason, and there are certain people that play chess, like me. I view the game like chess. I highly recommend getting involved in playing in chess. I was actually in the chess club in middle school. I love chess, and I take that mindset into the fight game, and honestly, like kind of just foreshadowing. Trey Ogden does the same thing. I don't know if he plays chess, but he takes it from a completely different mindset and look within the sport, where you just view it from a strategic battle type of mindset, which I really admire and I really like, because I try to do the same thing. And a lot of people think I'm kind of like, too thorough with certain things, but I think any advantage helps. So I'm that's why I think strategists are some of the best. Like, I really like Firas Zahabi. I really like Greg Jackson. Those guys are super, super interesting.
As Derek says in the chat,
oh, come on, Derek.
No clue about chess.
Oh, man, I love chess. I downloaded this chess app, chess.com, this app on my phone, and I absolutely love it. So I got to have you guys, I don't even know what my username is, but drop your usernames in chat if you play chess.com, and I'll clearly add you. I love playing.
Yeah, I've never gotten chess. I never got into chess, but it's I think overall, I mean, even though you train elevation, you still have concerns about Alhassan, but you do know the guy has power. The betting side, if you want to take that under 1.5, I mean, I understand why you take it. I mean, but it seems like more times than not, when I do under 1.5 bets, they never cash.
They're trappy. It's super smart. Like if you could ever find under 2.5, you already know that it's going to be juiced, but at least you can use that. Like, say you didn't know who was going to win, but you're praying for violence. You attach a couple violence under 2.5s, and that's a different way to do a parlay. I don't necessarily love doing winning methods or anything like that, unders or overs, but you could do that, and it would make a ton of sense, especially for a lot of heavyweight fights. You already know that the under 1.5 is the most likely that everybody's going to target. Under 2.5 is probably going to sit at like -300, -400. But it's like in coin flip fights, you just know it's going to be violence. Sometimes just take that and just move on.
I will say this: my New Year's resolution in terms of MMA betting is stop chasing money on fight night.
Yeah,
I'm literally just going to make my bets pre-fight, and then you know what, do some live wagering here and there. I'll live bet. I think live bet's a key in MMA betting.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, to go back on your point about Trey Ogden, I think that also comes to the fact of being the head coach of Marathon MMA, running the gym. I think that plays into that as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to like James Krause was a very, very smart mind, and he had a lot going for him at Glory MMA. Trey Ogden being like a pupil under that and kind of taking over as Marathon MMA. I love it. And I think it's the combination of being a coach and a fighter. It's a tough balance. Not many people can do it. It's very difficult doing that. I can tell you it's difficult, but it's I do think it gives you an advantage. You view the game from a completely different aspect.
I can't recall who the fighter was that had told me this. And they were talking about, hey, being a coach, helping out the younger guys in the gym, working them up. And they said, but unfortunately, there becomes a point where you have to be selfish. You have to sit there and say, man, I got to worry about me. I can't be constantly always worrying about, hey, what is John Smith doing today in the gym to get ready? So, I mean, it's definitely a tough balance, and you know that tough balance very well. Next up, we got Chris Curtis taking on Roman Kopylov. Kopylov is a -270 betting favorite, plus 220 for Chris Curtis. Kopylov 9,100 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Curtis 7,100 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Probably the biggest storyline in terms of this fight is Curtis accuses Kopylov of sending 2 Russians into his gym to spy on him because as Chris Curtis said, magically Kopylov shows up in Vegas. These two guys no longer coming to the gym. But it's also like, hey, man, you're in Las Vegas. There isn't exactly a ton of places to train.
Yeah. Well, I've had that happen to me and my team when I was fighting in CES and after I had my Bellator MMA debut. I had this guy come in for a week trial. I had no idea who he was. So I could see what Chris Curtis is saying. And the guy was in there as a spy. Swear to God, he was in there as a spy. And then, like, my dad, being my dad, just so smart in recognizing some stuff. Because the guy came in there with just like a big ego, sat him down, questioned him, and then it turned into like a little bit of an argument. And the guy's like, "Yeah, he's gonna choke him out. Our guy's gonna choke him out." I ended up winning that fight, but yeah, so that stuff happens. But in Vegas, right? Like that's the MMA hotspot, and there's several gyms that I recommend training at, and Extreme Couture is one of them. I really like Extreme Couture. I think that Roman Kopylov is very, very good. Chris Curtis is a staple for Extreme. Kopylov is very good. On paper, it looks like Chris Curtis has more volume than Kopylov. And I would say that's mostly the case because people don't kick against Chris Curtis all that often. They get into boxing range, or rather, Chris Curtis just works inside boxing range, and he's the better boxer. 99% of the time, he's the better boxer. But I do view Roman Kopylov as a guy who is not just a boxer. He's the better kickboxer in this fight, in my opinion. The way that he kicks to the legs, he kicks to the body, kicks to the head, blending everything and not just engaging in a boxing fight is how you can beat Chris Curtis. Hit him, move, stick and move, frustrate him with your kicks. We've seen Chris Curtis get frustrated time and time again. Obviously, the most popular frustration was against Jack Hermanson, which I think that everybody's going to look to that. Chris Curtis has also been in some absolute wars where, like, most recently he went 5 rounds with Brendan Allen, who has a significant takedown advantage over Chris Curtis. And it was a close fight. It ended up being a split decision defeat. He ended up having a split decision over Marc-Andre Barriault. But again, Marc-Andre just likes to trade hands. I think that the style of Kopylov, with some wrestling up his sleeve, is enough to kind of squeak by Chris Curtis. But if he goes in there with the wrong game plan and forgetting about his legs and just going hands for hands, I think that he could be in for a rude awakening, and Chris Curtis has some tremendous value attached to him. I don't like the line associated with Roman Kopylov. I think it should be closer because there's no guarantee he's going to go out there and kickbox. I think that there is a chance where, the fight happens and you just get, you're so involved in the fight, you forget about your legs or your best assets, and you're just trading hands, which I do think works in Chris Curtis's favor. All in all, not a fight I'm prioritizing this week, though. I just don't think it's going to be the best DFS-friendly fight. I think it's a Kopylov decision win. I don't think anybody's going to get knocked out here. I hope not. But yeah, give me Kopylov here. I just don't like the line.
Chris Curtis is always a guy that in an underdog role, you always kind of look at. I mean, the one thing that always kind of concerns me with Chris Curtis is, to me, he's a 170er fighting at 185 pounds, which one thing I saw this clip, I don't know whether I saw it on TikTok or Instagram. It was Sean O'Malley on Rogan's podcast. I don't know how long ago this was. And they were talking about weight cutting MMA. And O'Malley said, he goes, if I fought at my walking around weight, he goes, I'd be a lightweight. He goes, but those guys are monsters at 55.
Yeah.
He goes, I could probably fight at 45. He goes and be normal size, but it kind of made me, as I was driving to your office, I was thinking about that clip and thinking about Chris Curtis. And, to me, I think he should be a 70. I mean, he's probably a guy that if there's a 175-pound weight class, he'd probably be ideal for that. I mean, I do like Kopylov in this, but anytime I can get some plus money or, in the 7,000 range on Chris Curtis, he's always kind of someone I do get a little bit interested in. Next up, we got a matchup between Christian Rodriguez and Austin Bashi. Austin Bashi making his UFC debut here after getting that win on the Contender Series. He's a minus 265 betting favorite, plus 215 for Rodriguez. Rodriguez, 7,300 DK, $11 on FanDuel. Austin Bashi, 8,900 DK, and $19 on FanDuel. I'm very familiar with Austin Bashi. He's an anomaly in this sport in 2025, and what I mean by that is typically a lot of fighters on the regional scene, it is a rush to get to the UFC, where Austin Bashi, That was not the case with him and his team. Him and his team took the route of, we are going to take a ton of fights on the regional scene, and we are going to make sure we're ready for the UFC. My understanding is he had opportunities earlier on in his career to get to the UFC, but he wanted to develop those skills. And Pete, that's just something we don't see in this sport today.
Yeah, I mean, it's the game of taking a short notice fight to get into the UFC. Take that L, move on for your next 2 fights, and try to win those next 2 fights. That's how a lot of people get into the UFC. Just do the UFC a favor, take an unfavorable matchup. That's your foot in the door, and then try to round out your career with the next 2 fights. Hopefully, you get re-signed. I do like the guys that are putting in the work on the regional scene. But it's tough to decline a big fight offer, right? Because you're not getting a lot of money, especially if you're not fighting at home. If you are fighting at home, of course, ticket sales can help you. I do think that Austin Bashi is a pretty damn talented prospect. I absolutely do. I think that his wrestling is awesome. The fact that he's an 80cc gold medalist, the fact that he rounded out his wrestling by complementing it with jiu-jitsu, I think is great. I think his striking is probably his weakest point, but he's a suffocating wrestler, very, very good submission grappler as well. You're in the UFC now, and he may be ready for most of the division, but why would you go up against Christian Rodriguez in your debut? In my opinion, right? Like, Christian Rodriguez, since he came into the UFC, has been against some pretty tough fighters: Jonathan Pierce, Raul Rosas, Cameron Simon, Isaac Dolgarian, Julian Rosa. Those are some very, very talented fighters, tough names, tough matchups, and similar skill sets to what Bashi's going to bring to the table. I mean, this is not going to be the first fighter that's going to try to take Christian Rodriguez down. He's kind of, developed so much experience against these type of guys. It's a wrestler who's trying to take his back, choke him out, wrestler trying to win top time, and look what happened in an Isaac Dolgarian fight. Like, there's no way that I think Bashi's better than, Isaac Dolgarian. I think he's different. I think that he has a better submission skill set to him. But is he a better fighter than Isaac Dolgarian? No. Was that a pretty poor decision for Christian Rodriguez? Absolutely. I mean, he got taken down 7 times. Dolgarian attempted 2 submissions, had 9 minutes of control time. But in the day and age of, valuing damage so significantly for the judges, that's what they saw. And I still don't necessarily know how they scored that fight for Christian Rodriguez, but it opens the door for the conversation saying, this is the prospect killer. Christian Rodriguez really is. And I know that most of his work was done at bantamweight, but if you look, he didn't make weight consistently at bantamweight. He always had a weight advantage over people. He would balloon up to 160, 165 pounds, as said in an interview. So yeah, he was okay, and he was able to do that against, lighter guys, bantamweights, being a weight bully, having advantages. Now he's at 145 pounds because he's been unable to make 135 pounds consistently. And he could be at the point where a very talented prospect is too strong for him. Too strong, has the skill set. Big difference between bantamweight and featherweights. And Bashi can go in there and replicate what he did on the Contender Series, where he had 10 takedowns, went 10 of 15, had 5.5 minutes of control time. So having 10 takedowns and only 5 minutes of control time, it just tells me that within an 8-minute fight, maybe his control isn't as great as it should be, but his gas tank is pretty damn good. His chain wrestling is pretty damn good. It's a tough discussion where it's like, okay, this guy's going to be a true 145er, has the wrestling and grappling upside over Christian Rodriguez, but Christian Rodriguez clearly has the experience edge. And it's really hard for me to not back the guy who's been here, done that, because UFC jitters are a real thing. And, just going up against this specific stylistic matchup, I think will help Christian Rodriguez. Could he get ragdolled into oblivion? Absolutely. But this could be a situation where it's like a live betting situation. I mean, Christian Rodriguez already is an underdog. And I'm going to put some money on him because I just think Bashi hasn't proven it against solid competition. He hasn't fought Jonathan Pierce, hasn't fought Rosas Jr., Simon, Dolgarian, Orosa. And Bashi could go in there and pass this test, absolutely. But most likely, I tend to take a wait and see approach with these prospects in tough UFC debuts. That's what I'm going to do here, just because I think the line's a little too crazy. So give me the value in Christian Rodriguez. But I'm anticipating him to get taken down, but he needs to come up with a solution, get back to his feet, punish him on the feet. He's clearly the better striker. I don't want him pulling guillotines all that much. But yeah, I think Bashi's very young, and he may go on to do great things, but this UFC debut is not an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that when this fight was announced, my first thought was like, wow, that's an interesting first fight in the UFC. I mean, especially when you think of, two notable wins that Christian Rodriguez has had against Raul Rosas Jr. and Isaac Dolgarian, both great prospects there. And you mentioned, UFC jitters are real, but also I think it being in the Apex also kind of helped because he's already fought this building before. So, but Bashi is a legitimate prospect, comes out of that Michigan regional scene. He ended up traveling, went down to Shamrock FC, which is another quality regional promotion in the Midwest. This was a guy that was willing, and he took on tough competition. He was not someone who was trying to go out there and pad your record to get to where you want to be. So I'm going to go with Bash here because of that grappling upside. But yeah, I definitely see the concerns in there. Next up, we got Punahele Soriano taking on Uros Medic. Medic is a minus 220 betting favorite, plus 180 for Puna. Puna 7,500 DK, $14 on FanDuel. Medic 8,700 DK and $17 on FanDuel. Second fight at 170 pounds for Punahele Soriano. And we saw him lace up those wrestling shoes in his last one. And as me and Pete were talking pre-show, like if you knew the game plan was for Soriano to lace up the wrestling shoes, I don't mind the underdog call here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, before I pivoted to Christian Rodriguez as my underdog, I circled this fight. And I find this to be a very difficult one because I do think that Uros Medic, despite coming from Alaska FC, which is the worst promotion you can come from, I think that he's absolutely legit in the striking department. His hands are very dangerous. He uppercutted Tim Means and knocked him out really, really clean. He has very good kicks as well. He has spinning back fist Matthew Semmelsberger in a spot where he came through as an underdog. He knocked out Omar Morales with some very, very powerful hands. I do think that he's dangerous on the feet. And if you just strike with him, you're playing with fire. You can hit him with some big shots like Jalen Turner did. You can go in there and take him down, expose that poor submission defense that he does have, where he lost against Jalen Turner via rear naked choke and against Mikdekbek Oralbai, where Oralbai just ragdolled him with 7 takedowns. The problem is I just don't know if Punahele Soriano does that, right? And I think that Puna has shown a susceptibility of getting cracked on the feet. Roman Kopylov hit him with some body shots and made him quit on himself. Puna, very, very good. Former 185er fighting now at 170. You got Uros Medic, former lightweight, now fighting at 170 pounds. So it's just like, man, what happens here? I think that the striking speed of Uros Medic, he'll be able to pick apart Punahele Soriano, who really doesn't have much variety to his striking. It's just a big left hand or a big lead hook. The advantage comes from the camp that Puna comes from, of Extreme Couture. Working with Eric Nixick, they should have a nice strategy for him of going to the takedown well. We've seen Medic get taken down 7 times by Oralbai, once against Jalen Turner. Everybody else that hasn't taken him down, Medic has. It's like take him down or pay the price. And I do like what I saw most recently from Puna against 𝐉𝐵𝐲𝐽. Took him down 5 of 6 times. Had almost 11 minutes of control time. Had probably like 300 grounded strikes. The fight should have been stopped multiple times, and it was one-way traffic against 𝐉𝐵𝐲𝐽. I don't know if Puna's going to do that every fight, because outside of that fight, there was only one other fight he got to take down in the UFC, and that was against Oscar Piechota. I don't know. On the Contender Series, he did it 3 times. It just doesn't seem to me like he's going to go to that well. I don't know. I want him to do that. I know that he trains it. I know that the guys at Extreme are well-rounded. I think he's an excellent underdog call if he wrestles. I mean, he can knock out Medic too. I just don't think it's a smart tactic to stand and trade with this guy. throw big shots, get Medic to respect it, get his hands up, shoot underneath, get on the hips, drag him out. The one thing, though, that I will say that Medic got back to his feet decently well against Miktabek Oralbai before getting submitted. So it's like, okay, say Puna goes to the wrestling well, lands three takedowns. If Medic keeps getting back to his feet, I do think that could deteriorate the confidence of Puna Soriano. And I think that could leave him being a sitting duck. So, like, as much as I love this fight from a violence standpoint, and I think they're both pretty damn exciting, it's a tough fight for me to call. And because it's a tough fight for me to call for most of my lineups, I'm going to pivot. And I'm going to hope that somehow this goes 15 minutes. And do I think it's likely? No. But I'm just going to hope because I see volatility around both guys. And in single entry, I'm going to try to just avoid the volatility. For GPPs, embrace it. But yeah, Medic would be the call for me, and I'm going to say Medic via late stoppage or by decision. But like I said, get exposure to both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is this is the right weight class for Soriano to be in as opposed to being at 185. And you talk about the 𝐉𝐵𝐽𝐬𝐧 fight. He landed 331 total strikes in that matchup. And the crazy part about that is 184 of them came in the third round.
Yeah, so he checked out from the cardio standpoint. And it looked like, okay, well, he doesn't have horrible cardio like we were always worrying about. But that's when he's the guy initiating it. How is he if he's absorbing shots? So, but yeah, that was probably one of his best performances is because his back was in the corner.
Yeah, let's move over. Next up, we got a flyweight matchup. You got Jose Johnson taking on Felipe Buns, a plus 160 betting underdog, minus 190 for Jose Johnson. Johnson, A600 DK, $16 on FanDuel. Felipe is $7,600 on DK and $15 on FanDuel. Jose Johnson's a guy that I've had a chance to get to know over the past couple of years, so he's always kind of a guy that I follow here. But, I kind of want to do a deep dive into this, looking at flyweights and GPP upside of what is the percentage that flyweight fights end up near being in the top 6% on a fight card.
Yeah, for me, it's tough for me to get behind this fight just because I don't think it's going to be a fantastic DFS one. I think that Jose Johnson has significant height and reach over most people. He utilizes his reach well. Most people are going to want to take him down on the feet. He's going to punish a lot of people. Felipe Bunes, to me, he's aggressive, but I just don't think that he has the skills to stay with Jose Johnson. Obviously he lost to Joshua Van, but I think that Jose Johnson is pretty solid and a guy that has a lot of early defeats within his career. But I do think that Jose Johnson will be able to pass this test and beat up Felipe Bunes for 15 minutes. I don't expect it to be the best DFS performance. Obviously, lighter weight classes, better cardio, higher activity levels. But for me, it's going to be a pass, and it's going to be a pass because of the salary attached. I think that you could find $100 and go up to Uros Medic from 8,600 to 8,700, and you get a little bit more finish upside. I think that Johnson at 8,600, I think that it's an okay play, but nothing that I would prioritize. But it's Johnson via decision for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking in that 84 to say 88, 87 range, I think there's other options. I'd rather get to Ribas. You mentioned about Uros Medic. I'd rather get in that spot as well in terms of that one. But yeah, Jose Johnson is going to be the pick for me. But I just kind of wonder whether it can ultimately be a fight that ends up being can get you in that top 6%. I just don't think that it's likely going to be that case. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup. Marco Tulio taking on Ihor Potieria. Potieria, a plus 385 betting underdog, minus 575 for Tulio. Tulio, 9,600 DK, $21 on FanDuel. Potieria, 6,600 DK, $9 on FanDuel. It was that long. I mean, look, Ihor Potieria, it's not been a great run in the UFC. 2-5. I mean, I can remember back, a while ago when He was literally brought in to lose to Shogun in Shogun's retirement fight. He goes out there and knocks out Shogun. Of course, he made that drop to 185 pounds. Marco Tulio is out of shoot to box there at Diego Lima's gym in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC needs some guys to take matchups nobody else wants, and I think that's why Ihor Potieria stuck around for a while, is because they need all these dangerous killers to find fights, and like you just need certain fighters to just accept them, and Potieria has done that. I mean, his run has been pretty damn rough. Lost to Nikolai, beat Shogun, lost to Olberg, lost to Bellato despite having early success. Surprisingly beat Brischek via decision. Lost to Pereira, lost to Almeida. So, like, he's fought a lot of tough opponents, and I think that's kind of what's given him a longer leash within the company. But I do think that the duelist is coming to an end, and maybe not. I mean, like, Sam Alvey took some fights too, and he stuck around for like 5 fights longer than I thought he would too. Ihor Potieria in this one against Marco Tulio, I think will be kind of just covered everywhere. Marco can take him down. Marco is a very dangerous striker, as displayed on the Contender Series, where he knocked out Matteo Duclos with a nice spinning back kick to the liver. I think that Potieria has power, as evidenced by his knockdowns over Brischek, Rodolfo Bellato, Shogun Rua, and Lukasz Sodolski on the Contender Series years back. I think, like, he's just there, and he's a punt play that, he's fun to plug in your lineups because of the salary savings. But outside of a knockout in an exchange, I just don't see how he's the better fighter than Marco Tulio here. So Marco Tulio at 9,600, I think, is a very solid play. I won't be prioritizing because it's a little bit of a rich price tag, but he does have some takedown upside. He does have some KO upside, and I do think that he eventually knocks out Ihor Potieria. So yeah, give me Marco Tulio here at 9,600. I think he's solid, but I think Poteria's days are coming to an end.
Friends don't let friends put Ihor Potieria in their DFS lineups.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a few times he's come through, but man, if you look historically, he is always underpriced. I mean, 68, 66, 74, 66, 69. I mean, like, there's a reason why he's a massive underdog each and every fight.
He's the B side of the fights. I mean, and you mentioned a great point. Like, these are the type of fighters the UFC wants. They want those guys that are going to go in there and they just know that, you know what, hey, you pick up the phone, you call their manager, and you say, hey, we got a date. This is the opponent. They're just going to say, send the contract. I'm on my way. Where there's some other fighters, and I saw this the other day. Apparently, Tony Ferguson's getting another fight in the UFC.
I know. I don't know what's going on.
You know who the perfect opponent is?
Cowboy?
Yeah, but will he wait 6 months for Cowboy? Because Cowboy has to go through 6 months of drug testing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the fight that's going to happen, if you want me to be honest.
Unfortunately, you know what's going to happen? They're going to put Tony against a young killer.
I hope not.
Tony Ferguson will be in the GFL. Don't worry. He fits their MO.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
Supposedly, I saw a tweet from a respected MMA journalist that said the GFL gave a heavyweight $1.4 million a fight.
Wow. Well, hey, GFL, hit us up.
Bro, that roster. You're too young for that roster, bro. You're too young.
Well,
you're too young.
that's saying something because I ain't the youngest. So
No, you're definitely not. I'm not the youngest either. I feel it every day. Every day I wake up and especially if I have a hard workout the day before, I feel it in the legs. I go, oof. I feel that. It does get easier as you go over.
Yeah, dude, the recovery time is the main difference, right? Like I feel better now than I ever felt. I think I'm better now than I ever have been. And that's true, especially because of all the experience and knowledge. I will say, though, like, you could hammer out workouts so much easier back in the day with, you get the fatigue, but you don't get the you recover a lot quicker when you're younger. So the recovery time when you're older is just a little bit different. But yeah, that's the main difference that I've noticed.
One of the things I keep saying that I'm going to try this at some point, I want to try cold plunge.
Yeah,
I did
that.
the cold tub.
hate
Back
that.
in the day, I did the cold tub. It's the worst thing ever. But you know
Yeah,
what?
I hate that.
I keep reading about all the medical benefits of it.
Yeah.
And so at some point, I got to try it.
We have one here at the house, and I hate the damn thing. But Bree played soccer in college, so she's used to the cold tubs and all this and that. Like, I'm the sauna guy, so I got the sauna here too. I much prefer sitting in the sauna than going in and sitting. Get the hell out of here with the cold. It's not fun.
Dude, anyone's ever done a cold tub? It's the getting in part, and it's more mental than anything else. It is more mental.
That shit is physical. That is terrible. Okay, and all these people tell me, "Oh, it's mental." No, my bones hurt. That shit is physical, and yes, it's mental, of course, but I hate it so much. Like, there's nothing that makes me so angry than the cold.
Through your head. It goes through your head as you're about to get into it. Like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just go to the sauna, you're just like, hey, I'm going to sweat my ass off, you know?
Yeah, I like the sauna, though. Some people don't like it. I love the sauna. Some people, like, hate it, and they're like, you got to, like, hold the door on them to keep them in the sauna, and they start freaking out. I mean, weight cuts are different, but, like, sauna never has broken me. I hate the cold, though.
The sauna is called Florida in the summer. That's all this year.
That's true. Well, some people complain about the heat. Like, there's never a day. Okay, so, like, running outside in the cold, I probably ain't doing that. But in the summer, on the hottest day, I will go for a run. I love running in the heat, and a lot of people avoid it.
Dude, I've gotten to the age, I just don't want to run anymore. When I get on the treadmill, it's more about the incline and the speed. I'm not about trying to bust a 15-minute mile. No.
That's okay. But the running's tough on your joints anyway. So, like, if you're doing an elliptical, it's a lot easier on your joints than going and running. Or the Airdyne bike. I mean, look at Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman doesn't run all that much because he's got 2 shot knees. So he lives on that Airdyne bike.
The first 5 minutes of the elliptical is the worst.
I don't mind it. You gotta be listening to good music.
Once I get into it, I'm good. But it's like those first couple minutes, it's like, oh God.
Yeah.
But it's the one, man, it gets the sweat just pouring.
Yeah.
For me,
I love the Stairmaster the most. I mean, for all of our athletes to cut weight, I tell them to get on the Stairmaster. Climbing stairs sucks. And if you get on a Stairmaster, you can do 20, 30 minutes consistently. That's awesome. Anything more than that's amazing. But I try to make all our athletes live on the Stairmaster.
Anyone who says they like running stairs, you're a psycho. No one likes running stairs. Come on.
It's beneficial, though. You got to do it.
No. I've done it. There's nothing exciting about it.
I don't mind it. I do not mind it.
Yeah. Well, you're a psycho. You're a psycho, clearly,
Well, I was listening to an interview from Trey Ogden, and he was talking about his love for the sauna, too. So, I mean, hey, I got my bias this week, and you already know I like Trey Ogden to begin with. And in this matchup against Thiago Moises, Jason, I think he might be the most slept-on guy on the card. I really do. And it tends to be because of the low volume, but I'm a big Trey Ogden guy this week. I like him.
From a betting side, I don't mind Trey Ogden. He's a plus 150 betting underdog. Thiago Moises minus 180. But in terms of a fantasy score upside, that's where my concern with this fight gets. We need to talk about Thiago Moises 8,300 on DK, 17 on FanDuel, Ogden 7,900 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. I sit there and say, we're talking about 14 fights here. And so, I mean, the optimal lineup is probably going to be in the 650 range or not higher. And I don't see the winner of this fight getting to 100 points. I don't know if I see the winner of this fight getting to 90.
Yeah, what's crazy, though, is if you look, and, I wasn't looking at his box scores previously, but if you look, his fight against Kurt Hollabaugh, he scored 117.1. His fight against Rajabov, he scored 95.6. Now, clearly, neither one of those guys are Thiago Moises, but in both of those fights, he landed 3+ takedowns and had 9 minutes and 47 seconds of control time and 11 minutes of control time. I think he's going to grapple. He's got to be a little careful of what Thiago Moises possesses on the mat. I think he might have better MMA grappling than Thiago Moises, because I always thought Moises would be the guy to really go out there, strike enough, get his takedowns, utilize that excellent jiu-jitsu we've always been known to see or that he's had. And I think that he could play jiu-jitsu while Trey Ogden's getting top position and smashing. So if you look at the previous fights Trey Ogden's had, lackluster ones when he wasn't able to get his wrestling going. Jordan Levitt, 47.9, 64 against 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐳, 16 against Bahamondes, 53.8 when that weird fight against Moda, when he was dominating. So, I mean, he was probably on his way to north of 90 points, if not more, because it was going to be an arm triangle finish. So, yeah, I think that people could still be hating on Trey Ogden's low volume from the matchups against strikers that had better takedown defense than he expected. I think that Moises, I think he can get taken down. And I think they might have so much faith in his jiu-jitsu where he's not too worried. So give me Trey Ogden as my underdog of the week at 7,900.
I don't know about that one. Underdog of the week is I feel like that's a bold call. Underdog of the week. I don't know.
Well, who do you like more than him as an underdog of the week?
Soriano.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I just don't trust Soriano to wrestle. But yeah, give me Trey Ogden. I'm gonna stick with that bold call as my underdog of the week.
And look, and Trey has definitely turned the corner. I mean, there was a time where, you know, after the Levitt fight, you're like, I don't know if I want to go there again. And he has turned that corner there. And look, and you talk about gyms you want to back. Marathon MMA is starting to become one of those gyms in the UFC you want to back. I mean, you know, there's certain. I mean, if you tell me, you know, a fighter from the Fight Nerds is fighting this weekend, take my money. Just take my money, the sportsbook. Just take it. Because I know we mentioned this on the last episode. The Fighting Nerds may have the best apparel in MMA right now.
Yeah, you did say that last time. I mean, yeah, they're doing the right thing, and they're the hottest team in the sport right now. So pump out some shirts for your guys, and
God,
pretty good shirts too.
Yeah, they're on fire right now. I mean, you know, you're definitely not getting if a prospect from the Fighting Nerds makes his UFC debut, you're not getting plus money. You're probably going to get minus money the way it's going right now. Yeah. Next up, we got Preston Parsons taking on Jacobe Smith. Jacobe Smith, a minus 650 betting favorite, plus 425 for Parsons. Smith, 9,400 DK, $20 on FanDuel. Parsons, 7,800 DK, and $10 on FanDuel. And there are times where you get excited about a prospect. There's sometimes maybe you're lukewarm. You know, maybe Austin Bashi's kind of that guy. Maybe you're lukewarm on. You want to see him do it inside the UFC octagon. Jacobe Smith, he has got all the tools. D1 wrestler there at Oklahoma State. And, man, he is a guy that you talk about reasons to watch the prelims of UFC Vegas 101. Jacobe Smith, to me, is the reason to watch the prelims.
Yeah, so he's my spend up of the week. I really like Jacobe Smith. I think that he's absolutely fantastic. I mean, he wrestled out of OSU, if I'm not mistaken. Wealth of experience in the wrestling department. Very, very good. Good scrambles. Dangerous striker, too. And it's a guy that has all the wrestling to counter your shots, counter your attempts, slam you on your head, hit you with some big shots, do the same thing if you get back to your feet, mat return you. That Jacobe Smith has been primed and ready for an opportunity like this. I mean, for him to come in on short notice and be such a favorite over a guy in Preston Parsons who has had some solid performances in the UFC and actually some pretty damn good wrestling. So it's just like it goes to show you the caliber of wrestling that Jacobe Smith has. Preston Parsons isn't going to be able to do anything other than stand back to his feet, in my opinion, in the wrestling department. I mean, he took down Matthew Semmelsberger 7 times, took down Trevin Giles 3 times, took down Evan Elder 4 times. He's going to try, I would imagine, and he's going to get countered, and he's going to get slammed, and he will get back to his feet, and I think it will boost the score of Jacobe Smith. And if he's unable to take down Jacobe Smith and Jacobe decides not to wrestle, I think that he's a sitting duck for the power of Jacobe Smith. So yeah, he's my spend up of the week. I like him a lot here. The one fear is if like we watch weigh-ins and you see like Jacobe Smith not really looking like in the best shape. You'd like to think that a guy who had a great performance on the Contender Series has been working and getting ready, awaiting an opportunity like this. And honestly, stylistically, I don't see a better fight for Jacobe Smith. If he's in shape, he's going to dominate this fight over Preston Parsons. I think that it's a hell of a fight, hell of a stylistic matchup in favor of him. So yeah, give me Jacobe Smith by any way he wants, and I think it's going to be a very violent fight via wrestling or via striking. I think it's going to be Jacobe Smith however he wants. Preston Parsons, unfortunately, not going to be able to get his takedowns going.
The only thing that I would offer as a potential concern is, does the Smith camp view this fight as a way to get some cage time? That would be my only concern.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, if it is an opportunity to get some experience with cage time, I'd hope he's wrestling, because if he's wrestling, it's going to be a pretty damn good score. If he just goes out there and just strikes, I still think he's going to look like the price attached to him. So, hard to predict how fights are going to go from a score standpoint, but I'm pretty confident he's going to do well.
If you told me to make a bet on who could potentially get a quick win bonus, it might be Jacobe Smith.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That he drops him or straight takes him down, and this thing's over in under 60 seconds. It would not surprise me there. Next up, we got a female matchup, Ernesto and Kalahari. Kalahari, a plus 210 betting underdog. Ernesto minus 260. She's 9,200 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, where Kalahari, she is 7,000 on DK and $10 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I like this fight, and I think it might be one of the most slept on the card. The problem is we got 9,000 options, right? So I would have loved to get to Ernesto Carrascate. She's at 9,200 though. Women's MMA tends to be a little closer in certain matchups. You know that Carrascate is going to go out there and volume strike. She did pick up a takedown in her previous matchup against Deonna Barboza. She picked up 3 reversals. I think that Deonna Barboza's a much better fighter than Nicole Cagliari. Cagliari's good. But I don't think she's at the grappling skill set of Deonna Barboza. We saw what Ernesto Carrascate did in her Dana White Contender Series fight against Carly Judice, where together they broke the record for the most significant strikes thrown and landed on a Contender Series fight. So Carrascate is a volume striker through and through, 5'9", 71-inch reach, going to have 9 inches over Cagliari. I think she's going to be hitting her with long straight shots like a broomstick. So I think that she's going to just be popping out her jab, popping out her cross, and defending takedown attempts from Cagliari. Cagliari's a good Muay Thai, but will like to get in tight and attempt takedowns. May even have some success. I just don't think that she's the same level fighter of Ernesto's previous opponent, and the length's a little bit too much, and the volume I think is a little tough to replicate. So Carrascate via decision, via high volume. She probably scores decently well too, to be honest, because of the significant strikes and total strikes. But I just don't have room for her with some of the builds that I like. Maybe I will find one that I really like, but 9,200 Carrascate, I think it makes sense. But you never know. Women's MMA, it's very unpredictable, and Cagliari does have some solid jiu-jitsu. So hopefully Carrascate doesn't get armbarred from guard, but give me Carrascate via decision.
Armbar from guard, always live in women's MMA.
Always live.
Yeah, that's it. It's a running joke in these circles, but it is very true in terms of that. Next up, we got Magomed and Bruno. Magomed, a minus 240 betting fair, plus 195 for Bruno. Bruno, 7,400 DK, $12 on FanDuel, where Magomed is 8,800 on DK and $18 on FanDuel. And this is the UFC debut for Bruno Lopez.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll tell you what, the name 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 would probably make most people think that this guy is like absolutely phenomenal. And then you watch him fight, and I just find this guy to be underwhelming. I really do, even from the regional scene on. Like, he has some poor tendencies that I'm just not in love with from a backing a favorite standpoint. Like, he has a bad habit of putting his back to the cage and allowing his opponents to walk him down. And I'm talking about from the regional scene, and even in his most recent fight against Brenson Ibero, like there's moments when he's on the back foot, trying to gather himself, having a hard time absorbing a calf kick, which his opponent calf kicks pretty damn well. Bruno Lopez attacks the legs pretty well. 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 is a solid striker. And then if he's not the better striker in the matchup, he will try to take you down. And he's been lucky to land some takedowns. Like the fight against Jose Medina, he had 6 takedowns. It went 15 minutes, and he only had 6 minutes of control time. So, like, to me, that it just screams poor control on the mat. He had Brenson Ibero down there, but Brenson Ibero was just laying on his back and wasn't trying to work back to his feet. He had a ton of control time in that, 10 minutes of control time, 5 of 5 in the takedown department. I just don't see him ragdolling Bruno Lopez, who was one of the biggest favorites on the Contender Series history, and then got knocked out against Brenson Ibero. And it was like, holy moly. I remember when that happened, it was like so unexpected. He did get knocked down in his previous fight against Mikhail Sazinini, but he came back. He defended some takedowns. His opponent tried taking him down 6 times. He stuffed all 6, and then he landed a body shot and broke him. So this guy, Bruno Lopez, is aggressive. And if you look at what he's done on the regional scene, he walks people down. He immediately starts pumping out punches and landing punches on you. And I think that could actually work against 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 because 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 does not like being bullied. He has a tendency of not winning the foot battle. And I think that Bruno is going to walk him down, put him against the cage, land some shots. 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 may shoot a takedown, may even get it, may get a couple. But I think ultimately, like, I just don't see any finishing skill set from Magomed 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧. You look and you dive deeper into his record and you see that there is some questionable strength of schedule. I think it's the last name that's really like influencing these lines. I really do. And I just don't know if it's justified. I view this as too wide, in my opinion. His control in his previous fight against Brenson Ibero was good, but I'm not sold that Brenson Ibero is all that good. Like, I don't know, man. Give me Bruno Lopez to pull off the upset here. I don't know if he does it via decision by landing harder shots and wins the damage battle, or if he ends up knocking out Magomed 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧. But give me Lopez here. I like him quite a bit at 7,400 in a spot where I think the line's a little too wide.
Look, it's never a bad idea just to bet on a fighter whose name ends in OV. I'm gonna say, probably, you probably would, be plus money if you bet every OV fighter on every card throughout the year. You'd probably end up plus money.
100%.
But also, I think you're spot on that those lines do get juiced because people go, oh, let me just bet that guy.
Yeah, and I just don't think he's passed the eye test to me. Like, if you watch the film on him, you're like, don't get that same feeling as when you watch some of these other fighters from like Khabib's camp or the Tajikistan fighters or all this and that. I just think that 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧 is a little overrated. So give me Bruno Lopez.
Next up, we got Klein Dudakova. Dudakova, a plus 525 betting underdog, minus 900 for Fatima Klein. She's 9,800 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. Dudakova, 6,400 on DK, and $8 on FanDuel. 9,800. We don't see many fighters get in this range, Pete.
I don't really understand why. Like, I don't think she's great. And I think that she's shown that she can get reversed in positions. But, like, why is she, like, one of the cheapest fighters we've ever had? I don't know. I'm kind of scratching my head. I mean, this is the same fighter that went 15 minutes against Sam Hughes. And it was a split decision. And she took down Sam Hughes 3 times, had 4.5 minutes of control time, attempted 10 takedowns. The line is, like, ridiculously wide. And, yeah, I do like Fatima Klein. I think that Fatima, debuting against Jasmine Jasudavicius is a very, very tough debut. She went 15 minutes, though, which is a lot of what a lot of fighters can't say because of Jasudavicius's grappling skill set. Subbing Cachoeira, subbing Ariana Da Silva, but she got controlled for a good amount of time, 7.5 minutes, 4 of 6 in the takedown department, Jasmine Jasudavicius did. Fatima ended up taking her down and having a minute of control time. So, like, you know, I think the line's a little crazy. Yeah, because I want to pay that price tag of $9,800 for Fatima Klein? She's a former double champ. I think she's talented. I think she has Dudakova covered. But from a DFS upside call, I'm not really interested. I'm not really interested because, like, Dudakova has been taken down once by Maria Silva on the Contender Series, once against Jinyu Frey. Not a good look. She was taken down once by Jinyu Frey, but Frey had 4 minutes of control time. I think Fatima Klein, clearly wins this fight. It's just like, what does the DFS score look like? Something I'm not all that interested in. Maybe Dudakova's got some injury coming into this fight that Vegas knows about that I don't. I tried looking into it, but it seems to me that Fatima is going to win this fight by a dominant decision or a late round submission. So I'm going to call a late round submission for Fatima Klein, but I don't understand the DFS salary of $9,800.
Yeah, I haven't seen the ownership projection on this one. I think that'll be kind of interesting if you're, looking to play multiple lineups. If she has a very low ownership, which very well could be the case here, maybe you look at it and say, hey, great way to get different, especially if you're playing in the big GPP on DraftKings and you're saying, hey, there's certain fighters. I mean, look, the main event's going to have high ownership, and there's some certain big favorites that are going to have high ownership. Maybe a way to get a little bit different than the crowd. Then our opening fight of the night, Alev taking on Selecki. Selecki, a plus 475 betting underdog, minus 800 for Alev. Alev 9,500 DK, $21 on FanDuel. Selecki 6,700 DK and $9 on FanDuel. Of course, Selecki is a guy that I'm very familiar with. Being a part of the John Salter team there in North Carolina, primarily known for his grappling.
Yeah, so let me tell you that Nurullo Aliev is one of my favorite fighters on this card, and I do think that he has to be careful in this fight. Now, the reason why I like him so much is because of comparisons. I get it. I mean, he's very talented, and he has some suffocating grappling. The wrestling's awesome. The top control's awesome. Being a Tajikistan fighter, I think that he's going to go out there and dominate this fight. But he's undefeated. And he's undefeated because he's been able to escape some poor positions. But I don't know if I would say that his submission defense is great. I think his survival rate is great. But this guy has been put in submissions pretty consistently, even on the regional scene. And I'm like scratching my head saying, man, Selecki really could spoil it for this guy if he's a little too complacent in an area. Now, let me tell you, Rafael Alves had this guy in 2 guillotines that were pretty damn deep. It seemed like Nurullo Aliev kept going to the well and didn't respect the submission attempt coming his way, which is fine until you go up against a prolific submission grappler who has that finishing skill set, who is a better submission fighter than Rafael Alves. I think that Selecki has the submission skills to cause some problems for Nurullo Aliev. He was also caught in a triangle choke on the regional scene. And I'm like, my guy. He's just sloppily on top of his opponent. One arm in, one arm out. Not really worried. Fully locked in triangle. Is able to not necessarily pull off a miraculous escape. But just times it right and gets kind of squeaked out of the position after being in a locked-in triangle for a good amount of time that I was surprised he didn't go out. Selecki could clearly spoil this Tajikistan's fighter's undefeated record. The Tajik Eagle in Nurullo Aliev is super dominant in the wrestling department, but he has to respect the submissions coming his way. I'm telling you right now, I think that Nurullo Aliev will dominate this fight. But he has to be careful of the guard of Joe Selecki. Obviously, the back-taking ability of Joe Selecki with the rear naked chokes. But I think it's the guard, the guillotines, the triangles from Selecki. If he's not wise to submission grappling in this camp, he's going to get finished. But I do think that Nurullo Aliev will dominate outside of that. So the perfect way to do this is just hedge by Joe Selecki via submission. I think that is his clearly only path to victory. Nurullo Aliev will be a top control menace I think that he will ground and pound Joe Selecki, who will be trying to play jiu-jitsu off of his back. Nurullo Aliev will be getting that top time, and he will be dominating. He had almost 11 minutes of top time against Rafael Alves, and Alves is a better striker than Selecki. Selecki will be comfortable with playing jiu-jitsu, and if he does get back to his feet, it'll be rinse and repeat, takedown city. So Nurullo Aliev, the Tajik Eagle, I'm excited to see him back in there. But one of these days, he's going to get slept via guillotine or a triangle choke. Mark my words. I just hope it's not this one. I will hedge with Joe Selecki, but for DFS, I love combining the Jacobe Smith and Nurullo Aliev, within my lineups because I think that their ceiling is massive.
If you're watching us live, be sure to get those questions in as we start to wrap up the show. But first, get into our straight-up picks for this one. The main event, I will go with Amanda Ribas.
Yeah, Amanda Ribas for me.
Co-main event, give me Santiago Ponzinibbio. I'll go Almeida.
Cesar Almeida.
Give me Kopylov. Bashi.
C-Rod.
Puna.
Medic.
Jose
Johnson.
Marco
Tulio.
Ogden. Smith. Ernesto
Carrascate.
Magomed.
Hell no. Bruno Lopez.
Fatima. Leave.
Yeah, Nurullo Aliev.
Let's see here. Get to the first question. Value plays under 8K and a core on DraftKings. In terms of value plays underneath 8K, I don't mind the value of Mackenzie Dern at 7,700, especially if she can get the matchup to the ground there. Outside of that, underneath 7K, I think Christian Rodriguez, Punahele Soriano. Those would be my top ones.
Yeah, so my top under 8K is going to be Trey Ogden, Bruno Lopez, C-Rod, and Soriano. I mean, I feel pretty confident that two of those guys at least are going to win.
Core for me, it would start with Jacobe Smith. Second in the core, I would go Amanda Ribas. And third in the core, just kind of save a little salary, Punahele Soriano.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the same. I'm going to say Jacobe Smith, Amanda Ribas. And then I'm going to be a little contrarian, unlike Jason. I'm going to go with my boy Trey Ogden.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more of it's just the fantasy score upside. That's what concerns me about that one. Is could it be just a low volume fight where there's not many takedowns and it's just that's just a concern for me with that fight. I mean, it's nothing against hey, Trey winning the fight. I don't mind taking the money line at plus 150 on Trey Ogden. I mean, I've been let's just say this week I've been adding to the bankroll.
There we go.
Betting a little college basketball.
Nice. I think the reason for me liking Trey Ogden so much is because I'm trying to avoid the 8,200, 8,000 headache. But I think that's probably most people's next click. Main event, high-end fighter they like, co-main event.
Look, I'm just saying I'm trying to help the bankroll tonight by I took the Penn State money line at plus 100.
Penn State? Who are you playing? What's this?
College football semifinals.
Is that bowl games shit that we talk about every year? What the?
I know. I was telling somebody the other day. I go, don't bet on bowl games. Like, look, I produced the ReliaQuest Bowl radio broadcast. Going into that game, I would have thought Alabama would beat the living crap out of Michigan. Michigan's running like a 1950 offense of just running the ball. Dude, it's 3rd and 10. They're running the ball. Like, they weren't even trying to put it in the air. I mean, and just a god-awful boring game. God-awful boring game. It's downpouring to start the game. And, yeah, I just bowl games, just play totals. Don't play the actual game. But I like Penn State tonight at plus 100. I saw that. I laid that bet because, last night I was the Hard Rock. Sometimes, like, I don't like – I'll look at the boost, and I just feel like for the most part, they're not really in your odds. But I saw they had FSU boosted up to plus 135 over Miami. And I'm like, FSU has won 12 of the last 13 games against Miami. And, it was an easy win last night. Easy win.
So you're the college football whisperer, huh?
Well, that was basketball last night. Night.
Oh,
hit the Magic. I've been betting them a little bit.
what about Oregon losing so bad against Ohio State? I mean, Ohio State's the real deal, huh? They seem to be.
Yeah, I mean that comes to the whole thing of Oregon didn't play in 24 days. Who knows what's going on there? But yeah, it's I'm a Penn State guy tonight. I think Ohio State wins. I don't know. I think with that game, and I'm sure the over is inflated in that game. Let me see what the over under is on that game.
The Texas is 53.5.
Oh, I'd play the over in that one. I'd play the over.
Really?
In that one. Yeah.
The college football whisperer. That is not me. My boy AJ is definitely that too. But yeah, I don't even know what the hell I'm going. I don't even know the overtime rules. I'm like, does this thing end yet? No, they got 12 other. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, so it's
the overtime rules
after
are crazy.
So it's after two. I think it's two overtimes. Then it turns into 2-point plays.
So weird.
So like back in the day, you might have games that could go on for 7. I mean, you literally would play a full other game, because you keep scoring there. But yeah, it's
so stupid. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It definitely is very exciting.
Dude, I saw ticket prices for like tonight's game. I think the average ticket price is $1,000 to get in.
For a college game?
Yeah, it's always the semifinals, bro.
Dude, that's crazy. My God.
Dude, I was looking at buying Lightning tickets for next week. Whew. Not cheap.
That's crazy.
I mean, you're talking $100 just for third level tickets.
Yeah, forget that.
Dude, bro. I was looking. There's a comedian that's coming to town. I was looking at their price. I was like, man, Jesus, everything's more expensive these days, bro.
That's true, bro.
Everything is more expensive these days. But of course, we got our DraftKings contest. Be sure to get in that. Our Discord channel, totally free to join. Also, we got that offer from Stochastic. Get 15% off any MMA package that they do offer. All you gotta do is use the promo code FightHQ to get that 15% off your first month. So be sure to take advantage of that offer they have over there. Pete, anything else you want to miss before we get out of here?
No, I just want to say Happy New Year, guys. Nice to be back talking some fights. Not the most exciting fights, but I will be taking a sports betting approach per usual. If the lineup dies early, that's my next best thing is just going fight by fight, doing sports betting, props and all that. So yeah, before you head out, if you can hit that like button, get us over 100 likes. We're happy to be back for another year of action. And let's win some money.
We'll mention if you haven't watched us live, come up 90 minutes from now, I'll be live on my X account for today's episode of the MMA Report podcast. We'll talk a little bit about the PFL. Don Davis with his, should just get off social media. But also going to talk about the upcoming changes to the PFL. There's no longer $1 million tournaments.
We knew it wasn't sustainable, but my God. I mean, you can't market yourself as being this. That's the reason, and then now you pull the rug out from everybody else. Whatever. But
yeah,
he's foot in his mouth so much already.
Yeah, it's we talked about it last week, and I said if you're a rising prospect, I think a year or so ago, you would go on the PFL no matter what if you were in the tournament. Yeah. Now the fact of they're flat out coming out and saying we're only guaranteeing you 2 fights a year. I don't know. Let's just say I've done some research on Bellator fighters. It is astronomical how many of them got 0, 1, or 2 fights in all 2024.
I know. Yeah, you put on a shelf. It sucks.
I don't know if you saw this. Aaron Pico's a free agent.
Oh, he'll be signed to the UFC very shortly.
His manager came out and said, my job is, to get him the most money, whether it's UFC or PFL. But yeah, it is the guy that I will tell you I'm very interested on when he makes the move to the UFC because it's going to happen. Usman Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, good.
I think the moment you see Islam Makhachev officially make that move to 170, start the timeline on Usman Nurmagomedov being in the UFC.
It's not a bad idea.
I'm telling you what, you know what? I would pay to watch a training session of Team Nurmagomedov.
No, I know.
I mean, could you imagine what those training sessions look like?
So probably.
And I feel like when you watch videos of those guys talk, I feel like they're major shit talkers.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean that would be a dream, going and training with Khabib. That would be fantastic. I would do it.
Yeah.
I
That's
would do it 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a legitimate case. He might be the best coach in MMA right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But yeah. So let's see what happens in the coming days. Make sure you guys tune into Jason's MMA Report podcast. Excellent stuff over there with his co-host Daniel. So yeah, I'm excited to try to make some money this week and hopefully take down the tournament.
Damn right, car payments due next week. So yeah, we need to make some money.
That's right. That's right, bro.
The car that's sitting in the body shop right now. Yes. Bro, my insurance is gonna go through the roof. I already know it. Gonna go through the goddamn roof. But appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. We'll talk to you next week. Get you ready for UFC 311 next week. We have 2 title fights on the card. Will we have 2 title fights? Who knows if both those bantamweights are actually healthy? We'll see what happens. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Fight HQ podcast.